Alright, welcome back, and I do have to apologize. It's been a little bit since my last video, and you know, just life came up, but I wanted to get back as soon as I could into getting some content up. And what I thought I would do next is another kind of project pen that I've had for a while. At least I've had one of these for a while, and I just really need to make myself get down to it. So what we have are two variations of the same pen. I'll show this one, and if you've read the title, you already know what this is. But for those of you who don't, take a quick look, and the distinct thing about this pen is this right here. So this is a Morrison Patriot. These were released, I want to say right around World War II or so, early 40s, and the thing that sets them apart was they had these emblems for the service branches up on the top here and various organizations. So they were really kind of patriotic pens, hence the name Patriot. And what makes them a little bit more unique is their filling mechanism. Actually, this one's undone. Let me do this one. And this one I think is probably the later model because it's more flat on top and bottom. It doesn't have the nice slant, so they did offer these up without the emblems, and this is maybe just one of those. But the thing that sets these apart is their filling mechanism. They just have a syringe-like filler. So they've got this little tube like you would see maybe in a Schaefer vacuumatic or the vac fillers, and rather than having this whole plunging mechanism that creates a vacuum, this really just creates a vacuum with straight pulling. You just pull it like a syringe, put the back on, and it gets covered up. So you just need extra barrel space to accommodate the syringe mechanism. So you only really get about maybe half a barrel full, but I mean, it's a pretty decent chamber. If you can fill that up, that's pretty good ink capacity. And that also means these are decently sized pens. So the trouble with these, and which is why I probably have put this off for a little bit, sorry, sniffing a little, is getting these things off. They were, you know, Morrison's not super top tier pens, so they made things quickly and cheaply, but still overall pretty decent pens. And the thing with these little ink chambers are they are brittle. They weren't ever really made to be repaired. So if you're going to, it's going to be a little delicate process of using heat to try to get rid of this glue, and slowly but surely try to either, you know, pull slowly or use something like a sharp edge, this little X-ACTO knife, to try to just slowly but surely get a little something and pry it outward as you apply heat to kind of soften whatever adhesive is in here, being careful the whole time not to overheat the plastic, make it soft, bendy, and deform it versus just crack the whole darn thing. So they're a little bit tricky, so a lot of people probably don't even try them. And the reason I have two, well, not the reason I have two, but the reason I had to dance over to this one is I did this one a long time ago, probably a year and a half ago, and let's see, I have it all here in a little box. And what happened was it did break off. It cracked at the top. So I was trying to think of different ways that I could possibly salvage this thing. So I wound up kind of filing this down, making it flat, seeing if I could ever get another piece of plastic and reattach it and figure stuff out. But I didn't have to do that because there is a repair kit from Independence, and well, crap, they're all, oh, there's one. It's all in the sack still. So here's the repair kit, and now I have two of these. So what it does is it has a new chamber made of this kind of thin plastic, a little less, I think a little thinner than the original, but it's there. Let's see how it stacks up. And I did break a little, like this is a little shorter because it's missing what would go on the nipple. So, you know, it's about the same diameter, and if I add back on what broke off, it'd be about the same size. You've got various little things in here, so you have some washers to go on the tip of, and let me just show. So this is the rod that came out of this piece, right? So this is the plunger rod, and it comes apart different ways, but I think I'll show you all the disassembly when I try to get this one off with heat, and I'll see how it comes apart, and whether it works or not, I'll start breaking apart the little pieces. So just take for granted, you know, the plunger comes out. And so we have these little rubber seals, these little gaskets, sorry, I'm hitting my camera, that would stack up and create, you know, a seal like you would do, think of maybe like a cork or a plastic piston that you might see on Mont Blancs or Pelicans or something like that. So these are just kind of quick and dirty ways of stacking something up, getting something together, being able to create a seal. And there's also this little cuff in here that's going to help kind of size these onto this little stem here, and hopefully that will be the seal, so you don't have to make a seal back here. That's hopefully going to be pretty tight onto the piston itself, onto the rod. So this is what you're relying on to make the seal without something doubling back in the back, as far as I can understand from these replacements. But hopefully that's what we're going to do. We're going to build up a seal, make sure it's within the new casing, and get the casing back on this nipple, and hopefully that'll be the full pen. So what else? Let me set this off to the side. And I have two of these repair kits, so my hope is this one I have to build up no matter what, the old one, so that's going to be, let's show it. And the other part, other pen, will be showing the process that I'm going to get off the Richard Binder website, and I'll put a link into the comments or the description section about how they work you through this section step by step. So hopefully I'll be able to model that, and I'll do it as much as I can, and if it works, fantastic. If not, and it breaks, I'll have to abandon it, scrape it, clean it off, and it'll essentially be the same process. So I might just have to narrow down to show you one pen versus two pens, but that's the hope. And I think at the end I will probably test both of them, because I do want to make sure that whatever I rebuild and gets back on gives me a good airtight seal, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm happy to actually have two, because I'll probably keep one, and I'll probably keep this one, because I think with this one it doesn't catch, like the barrel going on to the section, it'll overturn and you can pull it off despite the threads. And I even tried the other barrel, so there's something going on probably with this, but I mean, it's secure enough, and maybe I can play around with it and try to rebuild up some threads, or do a little something in here to see if it'll take, but we'll adjust that at the end. But right now it's totally serviceable, it works. So of the two, if I keep one, it'll probably be this guy, even though it'd be nice to have him with the slant. So I'm going to get my setup, which will basically be me figuring out how to hold my hair dryer to get the heat onto this section. I keep putting it together, taking it apart, I'm sorry about that. But the goal here, and you can probably follow along with the link I'm going to put in the description, but the goal here is hold heat here, and I mean they use 2 section pliers, which, you know, I'm not a big fan of, to kind of hold here, and start to kind of pull some pressure to see if you can get it to slip. And I'm just going to have to protect my hands. Maybe I'll wear some gloves, and I'm just going to let it hold there, do its thing, and that will allow me to kind of feel the plastic. Is it starting to get too soft? Do I need to just pull it back and say, nope, that's too hot? And then at some point I'll have to decide if it's starting to slip. If I feel maybe a little wiggle, I'm going to take the back edge of this X-ACTO knife, because that's pretty thin, and see if I can get into that groove, because it fits nicely right there, and see if I can do a little bit of prying pressure while it's hot, and hopefully a little bit of malleability into the glue, and get it off. So that's what I'm going to do next. And I'm not going to do that on camera, because that could take a long time, but I might show you the setup and maybe a minute or so of what I'm doing, but I'm not going to make that be on camera. So I'll take a pause here, and that's what I'm going to do with this one. We'll see how it turns out, and when we come back from that, we'll know whether I'm doing 2 replacement parts, or able to work with this and do the replacement parts separately on the other pen. So we'll leave it there, and I'll see you, well, in a few minutes with at least the heat setup. So see you then. Okay, so I'm in my bathroom. I have my setup just simple. I have my hair dryer sandwiched into a drawer just so it kind of keeps it upright. I have this little air diffuser attachment so that I can maybe hopefully keep the air a little bit away from my face and have a nice little corridor that I can hold very specifically the area of this joint that I want to heat. And like I showed before, it's going to be kind of right over the nipple right there, so that hopefully I can maybe hold it on either side and maybe do a little outward tension, maybe a little bit of like rotation, twisting, just to kind of see if that softens up. And I'll do it here in front of the camera for like a minute or two, but this may require me to go off camera and then finally do my little prying method. So let's just see how it goes, and I'll do a little bit, speed it up so you don't have to watch the whole thing, and then we'll come back when all this is said and done, and either I've gotten it off or I broke the thing, so I just have to get those extra pieces off. But let's go ahead and see what we do. All right, and we were successful. I was successful. We, at the team, I guess. So what I wound up doing is, just like in that last video, what I kind of did was really just kind of do this rotating, twisting motion. I did that for I don't know, several attempts after I shut the camera off, and after a while I would use the XACTO knife to kind of get in here and just kind of do a little bit of prying motion. And then I kind of thought, well, you know, I'll give up for the night because it's getting tedious. So I soaked it overnight in just some water and soap, just like I do with my shapers, the vac pills anyway, to see if, you know, if I've made any kind of break in the seal, maybe some water can get in there and help me. So the following day, about 24 hours later, I started doing the same thing again, and I reread the instructions, and they do say to wiggle the section, because what I was seeing, and this is what they described, was on the nipple, as this little, I guess, barrel is on it, there were some parts, and I hope it showed up earlier, of lighter material, like it was just a little bit more well, just light, we'll say it that way. And that was probably where the shellac from the factory is kind of loosened and not as adherent, so you didn't get the nice like black color of the nipple with the darkness of the shellac with the amber color. So nothing was, it wasn't just dark all the way through, it was kind of lighter colored. So I was hoping that would start to spread, and the next thing I did to say, well, I've been twisting it, maybe I'll try the wiggle. I actually kind of did a more specific wiggle, and when I did that, it just came right off, and it scared the heck out of me at first, because it came with a little bit of a crack, like it released, and it freaked me out, such that maybe it's like, oh shoot, did I crack the barrel? But as I checked it, like, no, there's no, I put a little bit of my pinky in there, just kind of put some pressure to see if anything will spread, but no, it looks like everything was good. So I got very lucky with this one. So that was it. So when the instructions say wiggle, I think they really do mean a little bit of a wiggle and outward pressure to kind of break up that shellac. So let's go ahead and get that off, and this will be a straight knockout situation. And then what we'll do is we'll take off this little nut handle knob thing at the bottom, and we'll push through. We'll see. There it goes. There we go. And push a little more, because it's kind of tight up there. I wonder if I should do some heat. I can't really grip it. Ugh. Can my fingers start to get anything out? Let's see, I don't remember how I got the other one out, honestly. I'm trying to push down. See if if I can grab it on the lip. Nope. What am I going to do here? I'm going to get creative. No, I don't want to use something else. What do I do? What do I do? Maybe I'll go apply some heat to this just to see if I can get this to expand a little bit so I can push it on through without risking a cracking or breaking of this thing. So as much as I wanted to do this without another cut, let me do that. But let me put this to the side. Now I will say one thing. I'll go ahead and say something now, so I'll get it over with. So I'll take this other one out. Apparently there's some variation in the nipples, and this is something I discovered just incidentally. So this is the old one of that I had, for which I bought the initial replacement compartment or piece from Independence, and this is the one that we just did fresh. And you'll hopefully notice this nipple is smooth, and this one has a textured surface on it. It has a little ridges on it, which, you know, makes sense. It's giving more surface area, so maybe, you know, more of a grip. So this one's smooth. And so what I just did was I took this replacement chamber, and it looks to be about the same size and same length, and I tried it on the smooth nipple, and it looks like with a little bit of force it's a good fit, and I'm not going to push it all the way up. But when I originally had this, if I take it to the textured section, it does not slide on, and I don't want to break this. So I talked with the guy at Independence just to say, hey, have you seen this? Is this a variation, or what do you have another size or anything? And all his recommendations is yeah, it's probably just a variation. So I'm going to wind up taking a file and kind of knocking these edges down to see if I can get this to a point where it'll slip on. So I am altering the original a little bit. And also now I'm kind of curious. I mean, clearly it shouldn't fit. Well, but now I've got this all stuck. I was like, oh, does this even, oh, there we go. There we go. How would this, yeah, this thing's even. So I guess they're different sizes in general. And here is, oops, sorry about that. And here is the old one that came from this guy, and you know, I've cut him down to see if I could do anything, but yeah, even this guy doesn't want to go on really well. So maybe it was wider at the top, or maybe milled a little bit differently, but even this one doesn't want to go on like it did. So that's interesting. So no matter what, I was kind of screwed with this guy, but I'm gonna have to file him down. So that will be part of the process for this old one. And I will take a break now to go ahead and see if I can heat this up, maybe heat down here a little bit to see if I can get this thing pushed all the way through, and we'll take apart the plunger and you'll see what kind of that looks like real quick. So I'll take another break and we'll come back in a moment. Okay, so it came out. I did wind up kind of using some soap and water just to kind of lubricate the channel a little bit, and then lubricate down here so it was able to pop out. It did kind of take a pop, but it was a little harder than I thought it would be. So here we are left with the base through which the little plunger rod goes, and then we are left with the rest of the chamber, and it's still intact. I don't feel any cracks. It doesn't bend or crack or anything. So there is a little bit of a dirty ring there that I'll have to do my best to kind of clean this out. And then we have what's on the rod, and what's described on Richard Binder's website here is a cork seal. It's crumbled away a little bit. Let me see if I can zoom in. But there is a little plastic gasket here to keep everything tight. There is this part, which he said was cork, and we'll see how it crumbles. And then he said there should be a second kind of, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe it is already loose between the cork. Yeah, there it is. It's already loose, I think. And then this is apparently is a clay-like material that should crumble out. And then here's the third little plastic disc. So two sandwiching that the red clay, the one more up top to keep everything locked down. So I imagine this corky stuff, Yeah, there it is. It is cork. It's a super ink stain, but it's cork. And let's just peel that off. Here we go. And lo and behold, yeah, is there two? What is this? Oh, maybe there's one. Oh, maybe there's a. Oh, maybe these are the three. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are there 4? Ah, okay. Well, he said the clay stuff should be pretty hard, and that it should crumble off as well. I'm just going to do that. No big deal. Okay, facile. And yeah, it looks like it. We have now the bottom one, a top one for the clay, which is also the bottom one for the cork, and then this third one, which is, I guess, the top one for the cork, and then there's a topper piece for the entire thing. And what he said to do now, what the website said, was to take the knockout block. I'm going to put it down here. We're going to find the smallest one that allows the rod to kind of go through, but supports the little divider. And we're going to give it a little bit of a tap. I don't know how hard to hit this. I'm afraid to break it, so there it goes. That made the top piece slide down, so it is now loose. And zoom back in for this. I just gave light taps so that 1, 2, 3, this fourth one kind of pushes itself down. So now it is not adhered to the top, and maybe I can wiggle it off the top, and we can have all these distinct little dividers. Get that out of the frame. Let's focus, focus, focus. And yeah, when it gave way, it gave way. I'm going to see if I can ream around it. There it goes. Get my junk out so I don't lose anything. But there's the top one. And is it distinct in any way? I'm just going to look at it and make sure I don't have to like keep them separate. But it dropped into my drawer. That's why I have the drawer open. And here's one. There we go. Zoom back out. You'll lose it for a second, but there's one. There's 2. There's 3. And the fourth one, we'll leave it on there. No need to take that off. And let's see if there's any reason to think that these are different from each other. They look similar, so I don't know if I need to keep them. Actually, maybe the top one is just a tiny bit smaller, actually. Let me put these up here in the field. And I might have to lift up my camera a little bit. But it looks like this top one is just ever so much smaller than the other two. So that will be important to keep note. And I wonder if I can, I don't want to make them work, but I'll just have to make sure that I notice the small one goes on top. I think we're going to be reusing that one. So there we go. So I think at this point, aside from knocking things out, everything now is totally disassembled. I'm going to move this to the side so I don't start losing them. And I guess we can go ahead and knock out the nibs if we want to. And okay, here's the old one. Or I call it the old one because it's the one I had first. And we'll just do a little knockout. Let me grab my knockout rods for a second. Let's do the medium one. That might be alright. Medium fits. Perfect. Let's do some knocking. Okay. And here we go. The feed, pretty simple. Just smooth, cylindrical, no breather hole, just the channel. So very simple overall. And we have the nib. And we'll show you this better once it gets cleaned up, but just for the introduction to it, all it says is, it does say warranted Wing Flow USA. So warranted should mean it's a gold nib, and I don't see any plating loss, but oops, sorry, off the camera. And you'll probably be able to read that better either on a big screen or once it gets cleaned up. But it says warranted, so hopefully that means it's a gold nib. Although it doesn't say 14 karat, it doesn't say gold plate or gold anything, just warranted. Let's put that over there. And here is my more recent one, the new one. And we do the same. There we go. Medium. Okay. And let's see. We'll note that the newer one, or the new one to me with the flat top, has more of the ladder on it. And I'm saying this out loud so I'll remember and not get them mixed up. But again, overall pretty simple, just a channel. And we will put it here with the other pieces. Similar section. Looks like this one's a little more slender and narrow, doesn't have as much of a ledge. This one's a little shorter, squatter, thicker end of the section, so that's another difference. So we'll put that to the side, and let's see what this nib says. This one does say, 14K, and I can't see it. Oh, it says made in USA. Again, it doesn't. This one doesn't say warranted or any branding, but it does say 14K. So, and it also looks like it's a shorter nib. And generally, it's a little more squat. So the older one, my older one, is a little bit longer, and the new one's a little bit shorter. So some variations. But let's see, are they about the same size nib? Yeah, I mean overall about the same width, so still pretty standard, but just the length is a little bit different. So let's see what I say. Long one here, short one here. So what I'll do next, and then I'll do all this off camera, I'm going to go ahead and do all my cleaning. I'm going to clean the inside of this chamber. I'm going to clean all the little parts, make sure all the residue is off, and I'll go ahead and polish the barrels. I mean, they look pretty good, actually. They're just usual wear, but I'll take them through the micro mesh, and I'll just cover up the imprints and do my usual polish, do the Novus polish, and we'll come back once everything's ready to be put together. So we'll start putting the plunger together, make sure we know how to do all the seals, and that'll be our next step. So I'll see you when everything's cleaned up, and hopefully we'll get these things figured out and completed. Alright, welcome back. We've got the flat top version all prepped up. It's been a couple days, and life gets in the way, so the other one still has yet to be prepped. Well, let me show you why I think we're going to be stuck with one for a minute. So here's everything laid out. Let me just kind of go through that. So here's the barrel and the cap. We have the plunger assembly here, and we have the nib, which turned out really well. Just show that real quick. So it is a 14 karat gold. It polished up really well. I'll put that up here with the feed and the section. So what I'm going to be focusing on here is reassembling some kind of plunger system. So I have a kit that I get from Independence, and I'm going to go ahead and show you what's in it. So we have theoretically a replacement channel, which is about the same size, similar in our diameter, and just much more simply done. Set that to the side because we don't need it, clearly. We have 3 little O-rings, and we have, and in this particular set, we have this little, I guess it's polystyrene or polyvinyl something, as a core on which those rings are going to sit. However, this one I think I got a mispackaged deal on. I think they just have the wrong piece in it. So this is super wide. It's like as thick as the base, and it's not very tall. So I almost feel like they gave me, oops, there it goes. They gave me a piece that goes in here. I think that's what they gave me, or something similar to it. Maybe not. No, probably not exactly that, but this doesn't feel right, because in the other kit I have, and it matches the Richard Binder, is this little slimmer guy, and it's longer, and based on what we read online, this is what it feels like I'm going to have. So I'm going to use this piece from the other kit, put this to the side, and I'll tell you another reason why I don't even think it's worth trying, because ideally what you're going to do is this is going to sit on here, and you will take ostensibly all 3 O-rings, and let's see, this is the awkward part when I was just trying to dry fit things earlier for the clip. Yeah, if we get it on, okay, fair enough. I have one fear that sure, with all, I guess unless I really put some adhesive on the inside, that over time they're going to roll off the back, because you don't have much, it doesn't really allow you to catch that lip anymore. But the other thing is, unless I really sand down the O-rings, it stretches it out too much. I can't get these in, and I really tried to push without breaking, but these are just too big, so I think I just straight up have the wrong size. So I mean, I get enough stuff from them, so at some point I'll just grab something that I need, I'll mention it to them, and I'm sure they'll supply me with this correct size, which narrower for sure, you have more of a lip, it's going to catch your washers or your O-rings, and you're going to trim this down to size. So I've got the website, the Richard Binder, pulled up just so I can do this in real time. So the repair part, so we're going to have this should be about 1/4 inch long, and it pretty much is, and it wants us to see if we can adhere this to the shaft itself. So this is not going to be spinning freely anymore, so what I have is actually boom, 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 just some acetone. Sorry, I keep bumping this camera setup, so I'm going to open it up. And what I use oftentimes is I have this little art brush that, you know, this does not melt with acetone, these bristles hold up. And I've used this a lot for little things with pens. So what it's wanting me to do is put this on the rod and get some acetone, or it just says fuse. So I'm going to get some right here in this joint where they meet up and let that kind of set up for a little bit. So what I will do, and this is me figuring out this particular process, is dip this in the acetone, and I'm just gonna try to be as, might have to get a new brush soon, this one's starting to splay, but I'm just gonna put some acetone where that joint's gonna be, give that a second, and I'm gonna dip it again, and I'm gonna put some acetone here at the bottom of where it's going to attach into it, and I'm just gonna hurriedly put this on, give it a turn, and let that kind of fuse, hopefully. If this doesn't work, I might just have to get some glue and just do this step by step, but I'm gonna hold it, let them start to fuse, and ideally these things take some time to cure, but maybe I'll do this again with them on and see if I can let the capillary action just kind of take care of everything. So put it on, let it fuse, do some more, because you can see there's some black getting onto my brush, so it is starting to melt a little bit of the, yeah, maybe I do need a new brush. This one's a little more splayed than what it used to be. Get some in there, hopefully it's getting in there. Gonna hold and press it, but not too much. Let's see how that goes. I may have to come back and do this part. I'm just gonna hold it for a little bit. Yep, and I feel it starting to take stick, or to stick. So let me go, while I'm holding this, let me read the next part that we're going to be doing. And it says, so fuse the tubing to the shaft by applying a little solvent to the joint where the tubing sits against the washer on the shaft washer. allowing capillary action to draw the solvent into the joint. Do not fuse the other end of the tubing where it exposes the shaft, i.e. do not fuse this part. There we go. Applying silicone grease to the styrene sleeve. Fit the 3 O-rings onto the greased sleeve. So, I have my silicone grease. Take a little bit on my finger. There we go. And I'm just gonna lightly touch it around. Do. Just like that. And now's the time we put these 3 O-rings on. 1. Ooh, that was super easy. 1. 2. And 3. Yeah. Big fat seal right there. And I'm just curious. Yeah, it's starting to, it'll slide right in there, so that's good. Okay, so that was easy. Ooh, let's see, use the XACTO knife. And so what we're going to wind up doing is cutting the excess of this polystyrene tubing, which is partly why I think we need to fuse it, so that we have something steady to cut against. And let's see. Again, this might be an over the camera kind of issue. Let me see what this feels like. So I'm just gonna hold the blade and just kind of roll it at first. I don't know how this is going to cut. Is it staying down? Gotta make sure I don't move that. Or should I do one of these guys? Okay, that's actually cutting pretty well. I can just push it into it. Yeah. That's actually pretty easy. Okay, it came right off. So what I really did, I mean, it's that thick. I just held it up and gave it a little press, and it found its way cutting through. It was maybe too small of a piece, but or just pressure, you'll feel it kind of give, and yeah, it is kind of squishable. So that actually cut pretty easily. Okay, so there we go. We have an exposed tip. It says carefully cut around the circumference of the sleeve. Use the thickness of the O-rings as a guide, which we did. So I rested the edge, and so it's really flush pretty much with the end of that O-ring. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we need to get a little bit of grease on the inside of the chamber, so that we're going to test the seal. So I'm going to go ahead and take that brush I had, dip the end of it into some silicone grease, and the instructions actually call for just like cutting a piece, like the tip off a Q-tip, and using that to kind of get the grease in here. So I'm just going to slip it in and avoid the first, I don't know, 1/4 inch, the part where the barrel's going to slip onto the nipple, and just smear that grease in there, and then pull it back out. I'm trying to avoid that edge as much as I can, which I think I touched, but we'll clean it out later. And so I will take my plunger and kind of get it seated in there. And I'm going to take one of those little washers that I had off of the thing in the first place, because I don't easily know of anything that I'm going to be able to push down that will help push this in and keep the washers from kind of slipping off that little inner ring just as the friction wants to push them off. So I'm just going to see if that'll tamp them down. And let me push down. I'll take another little shafer tool I have just because it's handy. I'm going to go ahead and push it down. See if I can get it seated. There it goes. Make sure those O-rings are kind of sliding down at the same time. Hopefully not getting too wonky. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it wants to push, it wants to separate them. They want to spread because of the friction. So Let's get it pushed down. Maybe I can use something to kind of get them seated down, back to flat. But maybe once you put the cap on, it'll kind of seal and keep everything flatter. Or once you put the final, not cap, but seal it on up top. So it's in there technically. Let me give it a push. It's staying. Push it back down. Let's see if you can see it. Push it back up. And they're a little bit off. You see that? They're kind of slanted up. I wonder if I should, you know, take some fine sandpaper and just work it around. But before messing with it, you know, if it makes a seal and this is good, then why worry about it? And it looks like if I turn it around, trying to see if it makes a flat edge, like everything is contacting the wall like I think it should. I think so. So let's push it back. Actually, let me see if I can test the vac. That's not what I was going to do. I was actually going to see if I can blow air through. So if this is a seal, I shouldn't be able to get air through here to pass out the back. So let me just do that. Yep, that was hard. So I couldn't draw the vacuum and feel it, but I definitely could not blow air out. So to me, that's a good seal. I'm going to go with that. So I think what we have works. And can I push it out? Yes. Okay. So theoretically, the next step is going to be taking, and the instructions kind of leave a little wiggle room. So they acknowledge that some of these washers that you take off might not fit back well once you try to get them back on. But if it has a fit, if it clicks back in, this might be what you're going to have to use or be able to use to get this on, and then use the acetone or whatever it is that you're doing, like MEC or acetone, and fuse it back on top to be able to create a stop for these O-rings. And mine actually fits pretty well, so I think I'm going to not drop it the next time and take this, wash and clean off all the grease that I have, use my acetone, and I'll show that too, and put this little cap back on and let that be fused together to be my stop. So I think I'm lucky in this aspect that I get to use everything and I don't have to fashion something new from a sheet of PVC or the same kind of plastic that this is what they were recommending. So I'll take another pause here so I can get everything cleaned up. We'll come back and I will just put a little acetone, slip this on, and then we'll have to give that time to cure. And then I think we'll really just have everything cleaned up, be able to assemble everything, shellac that into place. But first things first, I'll stop here and we'll come back when it's clean, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so welcome back. And I went ahead and did one step that only took like 2 seconds to do, so I didn't feel like just making that little bit of a video and just showing you that all I did was put some acetone on the tip of the rod, and I put that small washer back on the tip and just let that acetone kind of fuse it all back together. Spared you that because, you know, I'm always doing these cuts, and we're about to do one just in a little bit so something else can dry. But in all, this is the completed plunger unit. Looks like it's nice and secure, and it has been curing for probably about 12 hours now, not a full day, but you know, usually whenever you do an acetone weld or something like that, you probably give it a day or so to really kind of set up and take its cure. But that actually looks pretty good to me. So now all we have to do is get the plunger unit kind of put back together, go ahead and put the section together, and let's just kind of get everything together as a unit so that when that's all finally fun and dry, we can put the pen together and do our talking. So I imagine I would just go ahead and put the nib and feed in, so that's all seated and I don't have to mess with a shellacked filling tube attached to it at the time. So let's go ahead and align our nib onto our feed and get that down into our section. And do a little downward table pressure. There we go, flat. Pushing it down. Making sure everything stays fairly well aligned. Let's go a little bit more, if I can. And that may be it, actually. Let me just do a little push off the camera just so I don't have to knock it. And I think that's it. Yeah, I can't get it to move anymore, so that was it. And it looks like it has a good seat. It's not going anywhere. So let's get this in. So let's go ahead and I'll take that again. Open up my silicone grease. Do a little bit of touching at the tip here. And just again, I've taken a Q-tip and I've cleaned this out. So hopefully I won't have any grease up near where it's going to go on the nipple. So I just wanted to avoid it. So let me just give this a good slather. That looks pretty good. Let me just do a little bit extra because I think this is going to be my real only opportunity to get grease in here. So let me just do it one more time. Just make sure everything looks good. Get those strays off. There we go. Yeah, nice and sticky gooey, so that's probably pretty darn good. Set that off to the side. I'll take just a little bit of paper towel and just kind of ream it on the inside just because, you know, I probably touched something in there. Okay, there is that. So I'm going to take now my plunger unit. We'll get it seated. We'll get it pressed down. First real test. There we go. And yeah, it looks like I should have done that a little more slowly. It is a little bit pushed up. The O-ring kind of wanted to pop up around the side. So maybe I bring that back up. Maybe just redo it and just kind of push it down a little bit more evenly rather than pull it from the bottom. So maybe that's a better idea. Just kind of push it down so everything is entering at about the same level, not getting pulled off to one side and getting pulled above. There we go. Give that a shot. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to be extra careful here so I don't have to redo this. Do a little something I probably shouldn't do, but use that just to kind of push down. Probably should just get a little toothpick or something, but this kind of works for now. I'll wipe this off before it's all said and done. Just want to make sure those O-rings are not being pulled too much up, and also not really putting too much tension on this freshly welded joint. Okay, so let's use that, and I wonder if I can use a slightly larger surface here. Would that go in? That's a little bit too big. I'll use what I have. I'll just be gentle. Hopefully it doesn't just give me a good start. There we go. Slowly, slowly. Still a little bit. It still wants to do that. It still wants to kind of pull itself up. So I grabbed a toothpick and I'm just going to down in there try to push that seal and make everything a little bit more even, because I think as it pulls it's just not consistent with the forces, and as you look on the side as I do that they kind of line back up, so I'm just kind of compressing them back down. And as that grease hopefully spreads a little bit, the force will stay even all around. I'm going to spin it a little bit too. See if everything gets coated. And now that looks much better. That looks pretty stable. That's pretty tight. Like I'm actually having to use a little bit of force. Yeah, now it's really generating that vacuum. I can kind of feel it. Yeah, that was good. That's what I couldn't get earlier, but now that it's nicely greased up, it's placed in there nice and even. I think that's going to work like gangbusters. That's nice. So let me take that little bit, just ream it a little bit, try to get any little bit of extra grease that's in this upper part out. And let me go ahead and just wipe off the tip. I shouldn't have done that. I just kind of used what's handy, but I should have just not done that to the nib, so don't do that. Okay. Oh, that's right. We do have this little end piece. We have this gripper knob, and it just threads on just like that. And I'm not going to shellac it because really all I'm ever doing is pushing and pulling, so that should hold. And if we have issues, then I can probably put a dab of shellac, but I don't think I need to. So let's take this, get some stuff out of the way. What did I, there it is. So I'm going to grab my shellac. There we go. And let's just give this a good coating. I'm going to make this one pretty juicy, because I need it to really make sure it has a good seal to make it airtight. I'm going to do one more dip and just take it around one more time. And whatever's left over and squeezes out, I'll wipe it out, but nice and juicy. Move that. Make sure my plunger's pulled all the way back. And gonna let it go up all the way. It kind of stopped itself. Give it a little bit of a twirl, and anything that's left out extra, I'm just gonna ream it out up here, and that actually squeezed out a bunch. So I had a lot in there, so hopefully push any inside any little cracks. Take a little paper towel. I'm just gonna wipe whatever may have gotten into those threads, making sure that's still pushed up. I'm going to double check that is all the way up to the top. I can't go any more, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so I think that's where we're going to leave it for this section of the video, and I'll let this cure. I'm going to leave this for the better part of a day, so I'll come back tomorrow after this is really set up, because we're going to challenge this seal, so I don't want it to be semi-tacky or anything, and being a joint where there's not a lot of air exposure, I want to give it plenty of time. So that is it, and I think we're basically done. I mean, I'll have to do my final little Renaissance wax polish, but we'll get this together, and I'll look up some information and we'll do some writing. So I will probably see you in about 24 hours. And here it is, the final product. Everything is put together, it's all polished, and let's go ahead and pick it up. Maybe I'll zoom in a bit and we'll start to kind of see how it all turned out. So there's the slightly domed top, and I think it's a little piece actually on a flat top that they just kind of adhere to each other. That's kind of the impression I get from this little thing right there. But anyway, so flattish top, we come down to this kind of Art Deco-y geometric clip, and it's just a bolt-in clip. We have like a slimish cap band, and actually, I mean, these could be brass. I'm not sure if they're gold plated or not. I almost feel like they're probably brass. But then again, brass was a metal in short supply, or the government needed during World War II when these were made. So maybe this actually is gold plate, and if so, this gold plate held up really well, but not entirely sure. We have our nice nib. This is the one that says 14 karat made in USA. There we go. The feed shined up really well. We have our kind of blocky section, and I'm going to try, we'll see if we can get the imprint in there, but I'm going to move it around. I think you can start to see it if I can. There we go. I'll just move it in this light. So Morrison Fountain Pen Company, I think it says New York, New York, and then a bunch of like registered patents, blah 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 kind of stuff. And so I hope this shows up better on your computer than it does on my little camera screen. So there's that, and it's quite crisp. Sadly, it doesn't say the Patriot on it, but we'll get into that in a second. And then we come back down, we have this nice polished up flat end at the back. And if we get to the insides, we have our celluloid ink chamber. And let me get this out of my hands. And I did go ahead and try this in water, so there will be some water residue in here. I just wanted to test the seal before I committed to filling up with ink. And get you started. There we go. Slides nice. It's nice and not tight but firm in there, so definitely it takes purposeful pulling and pushing of it, so that's nice. And we've still got those O-rings, and they actually look like they're maintained in there. Like the seating is really nice and aligned. They're not off, so pressing them down with that toothpick and really getting a good amount of lubrication in there, I think, was the trick. So do be sure to do that when you do your own Patriot. But yeah, moves very nicely. So let's go ahead and put that back. We'll zoom out. Actually, let's not cap that just yet. So here's where you have a black pen. I'm going to use some black ink, partly because this one's deep and full, and I think it's just going to be easier to fill out of this particular ink that I have. So let me go ahead and get my paper towel as well. There we go. So let's find a good spot for this, and I'll just go ahead and just syringe it, and then we'll show you how it filled. So I'm going to get nice and deep. Give it a second. And ooh, yeah, look at that. That was a pretty good fill. That was darn near the whole thing. That's probably, I don't know, a couple milliliters at least. That's a good ink capacity. So put my cap on the ink. I think we've all seen how clumsy I am, so I don't want to spill this. And I'll wipe this off. And I checked the alignment, so the tip should be pretty good. It didn't need to really be adjusted. I think I just pressed up on one time to make sure it was a little bit more aligned. But overall, I think it was in good position. So we'll close this down. Oh yeah, actually, it's kind of nice for some odd reason. I guess with the black ink, there's actually a fun little contrast between the plunger now and the ink, so you can really see the O-ring stand out. So yeah, that is a good seal. Okay, I think it's a little more distinct for me. I hope it shows up on your screen, but to me it looks pretty stark. See, clumsy, I told you. And we'll get that together. And so I have some notes off to the side. I have some goodies off to the side, so we'll chat a little bit about the Morrison Company and then say a few things about the pen. Okay, so let's take some notes. So, talking about Morrison, we'll say the Morrison Fountain Pen Company, and I'm abbreviating, started about 1910, and they were kind of known from the teens up until about the 20s to do the blackened hard rubber with gold or silver overlays. Let me zoom in for you so you can see the writing. And they can be filigreed or they can be patterned, and I have one set off to the side that I can show you real quick as an example. So this is a little kind of a vest pocket model. It's a lever filler, and there it is, lever fill, and it does say Morrison's right there on it. We'll come back out. You can see this nice kind of wavy pattern that's got this nice texture to it. We have the chain clip up here, but of course this would have to be, almost have to be, I guess, not have to be, but yeah, you're going to want to post this sucker to be able to write with it. And looking at this nib, there we go, cheap little feed on there, but the nib is pretty springy, so kind of consistent with old vintage nibs. These gold nibs, springy and flexy, is very nice. So I'll put that one off to the side. And what we'll say, before we jump into the 30s and 40s when the Patriot kind of starts to get designed and take off, let me show you one more that was like in the interim. This is the Tourist. Sorry, there's no J-bar, so that's going to flop around. But this is a celluloid, kind of a chased pattern. They love, apparently, that kind of rolling chased pattern. And kind of just classic, you know, a little flat on the bottom, little dome top. Definitely actually a decently sized pen. And this one has one of their stainless steel nibs. After they got out of the teens, 20s, into the 30s, kind of depression era, they went to the stainless steel nibs. And this is the Tourist. This is one of the common ones that you'll actually hear from Morrison, aside from the Patriot. But decent pens, you know, nothing special, but kind of fun to have. And then moving into about 1938, they had like a predecessor that kind of got the design, one of the key design elements of the Patriot. And this was called the, from the Star series, they had a pen called, well, it had what they called the Cameo top, which is the top with that kind of oval cut through it. So you're cutting through a cylinder at an angle and getting, there it is, the Cameo top, where you could put things here like images or portraits or initials or something like that. So that's the Cameo top. And so this was a design element a little bit before the actual Patriot came out. And what else? So then we have, a couple of years later, 1940, just before, you know, they saw the tides were turning, and just before the U.S. got into the war, there's something that the Richard Binder site calls the Proto-Patriot. And unintuitively, I think I have one. It doesn't say it, but I'm pretty sure that's what this is. So, is again another chased celluloid pattern. They love chased things, and it's kind of comparable to a balance with kind of like this torpedo-shaped end on both sides. Just the Morrison clip, cap band, and of course the lever fill with the nice triangular Morrison lever, which I really do tend to associate these triangular levers with Morrison. When I see that, I'm going to pretty much assume it's a Morrison. But yeah, and this one looks like, is it gold or is it steel? No, it's steel. It's kind of a crimped nib. So this is again another steel nib. Was this one steel? I don't even remember. Yeah, steel. So this one's steel as well. But for some reason this is a Proto-Patriot, and this one isn't stamped as a Patriot, but from the Richard Binder site, this is kind of what he described in images he showed. So he said it was probably just a way to get the Patriot name into the pen market while they were kind of developing the more refined one that we think of today. So that was the Proto-Patriot back in 1940. And what else do we say? So then about 1941, we get the Patriot with the Cameo top. And this again being that Cameo top. And the reason they called it the Patriot is they put the crests of some of the military branches, and as time goes on, allies and special service branches of and such. So they would have Navy, Army. I think it was at the time it was the Army Air Corps. They had Marines. They had some special service branches every now and then. They had mothers. They celebrated everybody, and you could get these symbols on the cameo surface. And the first year or so, they were just like little decals. Yeah, decals. 1L, sure. And then later on, after about a year, they became these silver emblems that were gold-plated. And there are some excellent examples of these online. If you just Google the Patriot, you'll see some images, and I'll throw a few up onto the video that's probably going to be floating around about now in the video, so just so you'll see it. And what else do I see? Bum, bum, bum. So, as this is a wartime pen, they did have to make some accommodations, right? So Morrison in the Depression area had moved away from these nice springy gold nibs to steel nibs because they were cheaper. And, you know, Morrison's not like a top tier pen, so they did things to kind of, you know, make these pens more affordable, which is why I guess they just kind of stuck to simple chased hard rubber designs or chased celluloid designs, and stuck very simply. They didn't have the innovations of the other ones. They just kind of followed the lever filler around. But the things they would do is they actually ironically went from steel nibs back to gold nibs. So a shortage of steel for the Army led to actually nice quality gold nibs being put back onto pens, which is kind of a nice thing. And they had to change the metals they used, which is why gold plating was a little bit more prevalent. You know, they couldn't use brass, so they used steel, and they would gold plate, not steel, but like other metals to kind of put some plate on. And the big thing, of course, which what makes the Patriot, I think, for a lot of people, is the syringe. So notice you don't have to have a latex sac. This is celluloid, this is celluloid, celluloid, so it's all plastic. You could use cork instead of any metal. They had that little kind of clay material as well. And so aside from the nib and whatever little trim, this is basically an all plastic celluloid pen. So it really was kind of a wartime effort that led to the development or the usage of the syringe filler. And what else? Boom, boom, boom. What else did I say? And that was it. So these were largely, I mean, as the cameo with the crests and everything, these were largely marketed to people to be patriotic, you know, send it to your loved one who's going to write letters home from the field, or just buy one to show that you support the branch that your loved one is in, or just support the military in general. But for people who didn't want to be flashy, who didn't want these emblems, they made models such as this, either flat with nothing on it, like what this one is, or they made just kind of rounded tops, flat bottoms, so that you could have a Patriot, but you didn't have to have something flashy poking out of your pocket. And one of the ironic things about it is, even though these were called Patriots, these were not made to military standards. So if you had this pen as a military member, you could not stick this in your pocket, one, because super flashy, and this would probably stick up too high out of the pocket, so you couldn't even use this as a Patriot in uniform. You probably use this in your time off to write letters. What else do I have? Boom, boom, boom. And I guess, like I pointed out, this one did not say the Patriot on it. Some of the non-flashy ones, because apparently the ones that were really the Patriot were in black or olive, or black and olive, to kind of match the military uniform, the battle dress uniform. So if they were just a solid color like a black, a blue, a red, or whatever it was, that was more of a civilian model, so they oftentimes would not be labeled Patriot. But not being labeled Patriot isn't necessarily exclusive to those colored models. So you could have a crested one that just didn't happen to say Patriot on it. So a little bit of a distinction, but not an important one. Am I missing anything before I flip my paper over? What else do we have? And then, of course, if you didn't want the crests, this is also a good service where they would put initials, they would put a little metal plate so you could have things engraved, so you could still do other things with the cameo surface other than just be patriotic with it. And then, I guess the history of Morrison is a little bit unclear, because apparently the company folded somewhere in the early 1960s, and no one apparently is really sure when the Patriot model kind of finally came to an end, because it did take on a post-war life. They kind of streamlined it. I guess kind of like post-Parker 51, the section kind of got a little bit rounded, and you almost had like a little, not even semi-hooded, but you had this weirdly rounded section, and the back kind of got rounded off. So again, kind of copying that Parker 51 design, but it would still often have either a syringe filler, but they kind of went back to lever fillers after the war once they could use the brass again. And they kind of went back to steel nibs as well. You know, they could use steel again. Steel was cheaper, so they got away from the gold nibs and they put the steel nibs back on. So I think that's about the big broad overview. I mean, we have a wartime pen made with wartime materials, with the design really being a function of what materials you had at the time, which is kind of a cool concept. So if I were to actually talk about how this guy is writing, this is, let's see, let me write the sentence. Wrote too fast. It's kind of a fine line, and it's pen on paper. It's almost, there's a little bit of feedback, a little more than, it's not just smooth. Not bad feedback, but I definitely feel this a little bit more than some of the other pens I've shown so far. So this has a little bit more feedback, but is not scratchy. But I kind of like it on this Rhodia paper. I don't mind this one at all. So it's a little more feedbacky than typical, but good. Let's see. I mean, the Sailor ink, I think when I used it before, it wasn't super wet. And this nib, it's not super wet either. Do I get any? It's gold. I get some decent spring and semi-flexibility. And I'm putting moderate pressure on it. And did I do anything to the tines? No, they came right back. So actually a fun little springy writer for all it's worth. And what else? Do we have any reverse writing? Well, that's actually pretty good. Yeah, it's writing a nice, like a slightly finer line. And that's actually not too scratchy. Oh, I think as I use it more, it's not keeping up. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I just got a little bit of a placebo effect. Yeah, it looks like it starts off with a decent line, but it doesn't have the flow, I think, to necessarily make it a great reverse writer. No, you can do it. You're just not going to get a vibrant line out of it. And if I were to go really fast, it's keeping up. It's not skipping. It's got decent flow. Not bad at all. So with this fine nib, it gives me a little bit of flexibility so I could have some character to my writing. With this excellent ink capacity, I think this would be a great, like, just carry around everyday writer. I'm actually decently impressed. I haven't actually used one of these before, but actually I think this is actually kind of nice. What else can I say? I mean, it feels plasticky. It does feel a bit cheap. It's not like a thick celluloid or celluloid or anything, so it's not like feeling like a Parker Vacuumatic or even a Schaefer. So it does feel a little bit cheap because it's very light. But I guess that's not a be-all, end-all. I mean, this, though cheap, though light, it has held up for, was it 60, 70, 80 odd years. So, you know, this is pretty darn good. What else do I think about it? I mean, it's a good size. I pulled out my ruler to show you. Oops, here we go. So capped with this particular flat one, we have 5 1/8, and uncapped from the tip of the nib is about 4 7/8. And so if you actually go from the section, which is actually the holdable length, you get a whole 4 inches. And it actually fits really well. And this is a decently sized pen. I think having to go over that syringe filler means I get a diameter of about 1/2 inch at the widest, which makes for actually a pretty comfortable pen. And it does post if you want to. Actually adds a decent amount of weight. I actually feel that a little bit more than I thought I would. So it puts a little bit back on it, but it's not bad. I can still let this kind of rest and write with the weight of the pen. So not terrible, but you don't really have to post it. And if you did, it would be secure. Anything else I want to say about it? I don't think so. I mean, the threads, not sharp. I can roll right over them. They don't feel bad. And if I held it, because it is kind of a shorter section here. Yeah, I'm kind of like laying right on it, but I don't mind these. It just feels like a little bit of texture, honestly. And they do have, that it has held up, so the threads are good. And yeah, I mean, this is actually a pretty decent pen. I would write with it. In fact, I'm going to write with it. I filled it, so I'm going to go ahead and use this as a daily carry for a little bit, because I think this one will be mine, just because of the issues that I noted about the overturning of that. And I don't want to have to put that on somebody else. But yeah, I'm actually excited to be using this one. I actually kind of want to use one of these now, just to see what the steel nibs feel like. But yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised. So I would recommend getting one. I mean, this was not a terrible process, and even if you did just wind up like breaking that, you could scrape this off and do the same process, maintaining, like using this with the Independence replacement. I mean, I wonder if that's going to feel slightly more flimsy, because it is a little bit thinner plastic. I feel like that one gave as you squeezed it, so maybe not the durability of this. But then again, these were not made apparently to be replaced. They were made shellacked on so that if it broke off, no one was really going to try to replace this. And I guess I was reading online what people would do to repair these, but I guess one thought process you could do is, if you had better than this pen, but you could turn this into just an eyedropper, right? Put a little silicone grease up here, keep it tight, and you could have a humongous ink reservoir. Another one would be, some people have mentioned just, you know, putting a sack on here. I guess you could use maybe a silicone sack, because that would be a little bit more stiff, and just use it as like a squeeze filler. Just squeeze, fill it, cover it back up. So you don't actually have to replace the syringe if you want to use one of these guys, but I think if it's going to be aftermarket for repair and selling, to make a collectible, then you probably want to do something about, probably ideally maintaining the original syringe, and maybe doing this with cork instead. That might be a little more authentic, but I think people would be willing to accept this, because this would give you a long life with these O-rings. But yeah, I think you have some variations, some collectability in these as far as the many different tops you can get, the colors you can get, maybe even variations on some of the trim. And I was actually going to show just the difference between these two. We have the very Art Deco-y clip here, which is probably one of the earlier clips, and this one is a little more modern, so this one probably is a later one, even though there was a bit of a mix match. So I'll say a couple things about, there we go, is this it? Yeah. So some of the differences I pointed out earlier, and now I know that this video is kind of getting a little bit long, but this particular section, this kind of smooth, well lathed section, is probably one of the earlier sections they were saying, as compared to the blocky one that was a little cheaper, quicker to make. So to get an earlier section with a later clip, so I don't know if any of this particular pen is just swapped and mix matched, or if at some point they were just using up stock they had. So like, okay, we have this barrel, we have some of these sections left, let's throw this cap on it with this band or this clip. I don't know if it's just like a little hodgepodge of pieces they have, or if mine in particular is like a later cap on an earlier body. So that one I don't know. But anyway, I think I've let this go on quite long enough. But I'm going to say I think this Patriot is actually pretty cool, and I'm kind of excited to get the next one fixed up. And I've already gone on eBay to get a couple more, since this little process was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I think I'll leave you with that. And I was reading through my comments, and I don't have too many, but the few I do have. One guy was really excited for some Vacuumatics. Sorry, not Vacuumatics, but some Schaefer backfills. So I thought I'd finally go ahead and get back to these and show how we will repair the second generation that has the inner tube. So I think that'll be a fun one to get back into, revisit some familiar territory, and just close the loop on some extra stuff I thought that I mentioned that I would do. So I'm actually going to predict next time will be a Schaefer vac second generation. So thanks for sticking around, tuning in, letting me ramble for this last part, which I need to get better at, and I will see you next time.